So this video that you're about to see here, this interview on CNN, is wild. So we've been talking about the Maine Secretary of State decision and the Colorado Supreme Court decision where they said, look, plain face reading the Constitution, Trump actually can't be on the ballot because he's triggered the disqualification clause or the insurrection clause, which says that if you do an insurrection or give aid or comfort to those who do an insurrection, you can't be on the ballot. You forfeit your right to hold any office in the United States. And I've been kind of going crazy over here and pulling my hair out because I swear to you when I say I haven't seen a single coherent legal argument made as to why the Maine Secretary of State and the Colorado Supreme Court are wrong. Like, I've seen plenty of people say, oh, I disagree, he should be on the ballot. But then when you say, okay, why? What's your legal argument? What you get is, you don't get anything, right? One of the things you get is democracy. And it's like, okay, well, we have term limits, and term limits are by definition undemocratic, but I don't see people campaigning and crusading against term limits, so it can't just be something as simple as democracy, right? It's like, okay, if you don't think that section should be in the Constitution, that's great, but it is. So how do we contend with that? Do we uphold it and go by the plain face reading of it, or do we just ignore it, which apparently is what some people want? Okay, so having said all that, this CNN host here, Boris Sanchez, is going to run into the exact same problem I've run into, which is it's like pulling teeth to try to get somebody who wants to keep him on the ballot to give an actual legal argument as to why he should still be on the ballot. Watch this. He's talking to, I think, one of the top officials in the Maine Republican Party. So these guys feel slighted by the Maine Secretary of State saying Trump can't be on the ballot, but look at this interaction.
I sometimes think they took us for granted.
He's, of course, talking about the Secretary of State's decision to remove Donald Trump from the ballot. What is your response?
Well, Boris, I think the simplest way we could put this really is, we've got an unelected bureaucrat who likes to pretend that she's a lawyer, and she's literally taking away the voters' choices in Maine. Here in Maine and across the country, regardless of, whether they like Donald Trump or not, Bellows is wrong on so many levels. And it's getting to the point of really being embarrassing.
But if the state law, like the state constitution, makes it so that if someone has a complaint about a candidate, they take it up with the Secretary of State, who then is the arbiter, how could she be in the wrong for making a decision based on what was presented to her in that hearing?
Well, her decision process was just wrong. She's there to support Maine's voting rights, and she's doing exactly the opposite. We're going to fight this thing to the highest extent that we need to, and what she's doing is just flat out wrong.
Why would you say that? Do you object to Donald Trump's participation on January 6th? Do you think that Article 5 of the 14th Amendment, or rather Article 3 of the 14th Amendment, doesn't include the presidency? Like, what's your main argument against her decision?
Well, this has so much more to do with the suppression of the vote as opposed to Donald Trump. We would oppose this decision regardless of what Republican she decided that she was going to arbitrarily decide Maine voters aren't going to be allowed to vote.
Joel, you're saying that it's arbitrary, but what is it about her decision? What is it about her argument legally that you're opposed to?
We're just opposed to her taking away the rights of the voters to be able to choose the leader that they want to vote for or not.
But if there's a part of the Constitution that says that if someone is an insurrectionist, a state can intervene to remove them from a ballot, and she is designated to make that decision according to Maine's state constitution, then isn't it up to her?
Her reasoning behind her decision is completely wrong.
So what is the reasoning that you object to?
No matter how you ask the question, Her decision is completely wrong. Joe,
but give us the details. Why is it wrong? Why is it wrong?
So Boris, Boris, this is the thing, right? There are attorneys and judges, Democrats and Republicans across this country that have said that she's wrong. Not one time in my life have I ever agreed with Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, until now. Gavin Newsom also believes the people should have the right.
I'm just trying to get to the basis. I'm trying to get to the basis of your legal argument, and you're not giving me any details. You're just saying that it's flat out wrong. Why is it wrong from a legal standpoint? Like, is it that you think her interpretation of the amendment is wrong? Is it that you think that it doesn't apply to the presidency, that it's not a self-executing portion of that amendment? Is there any detail you can give us other than saying she's flat out wrong, Joel?
So one of the things that we've seen in the last week are very highly respected lawyers and judges, Democrats and Republicans alike, that have come out and given plenty of legal argument on why that she's wrong. You know, my job here is to protect the voters in the state of Maine, and what she is doing just shows absolute contempt for the everyday American. They feel like we're not smart enough to think for themselves, that she needs to pull somebody off of the ballot because we're not smart enough to know whether we should vote for that person or not. And that's just flat out wrong.
I don't think it's a question of intelligence. I think there's a legal argument to be made. It doesn't seem like you have articulated the exact legal argument and the flaw that you see in her decision. Nevertheless, Joel, we're grateful to have you and get your perspective. Thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, man, look at his face. He knows that did not go well, bro. Oh, that's like literally every interaction you have with somebody on this topic goes exactly like that. Okay, why? Give me a legal argument as to why she's wrong. Well, you know, bro, I mean, people gotta like vote and stuff, and you gotta like, it's wrong. Like, what? Give it legal. Okay, so let me explain to you what I mean. He actually gave him an out there to try to explain to him potential arguments he could make, right? So there was a lower court in Colorado that disagreed with the state Supreme Court. And the lower court said, the reason that we're disagreeing is because we don't think that the presidency, under that amendment, Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, we don't think the presidency counts as a, quote, office, right? Now, that sounds stupid. I think it is stupid. But there is some sort of highfalutin, deep legal theory as to how, certain parts of government are a quote-unquote office. Others are not necessarily an office. There's a different term they use for it, right? And so even though I think the argument is wrong, at least they made a legal argument. So in other words, they didn't really take issue with, hey, insurrection. They basically agreed in the decision, like, yeah, I mean, it's fair to call it insurrection, right? What happened? But the reason why Section 3 of the 14th Amendment doesn't apply is because the presidency doesn't fall under this amendment. They weren't referring to the presidency. Again, I disagree with it, but at least they made a legal argument. I don't think it's very coherent, but at least they made a legal argument. The CNN host even gave this dude an out where he was like, why do you disagree? Do you think it's not self-executing, which is another legal concept? Do you think that the presidency doesn't count as an office? Like, he's trying to help him out. Give a legal argument. He can't do it. He literally can't do it. This is every single interaction I've ever had on this topic right here. Nobody who is for keeping him on the ballot literally ever makes a legal argument. The only people who did it was the lower court in Colorado. And yeah, I think it happens to be a wrong legal argument, but at least I'll give them that they made a legal argument. Okay, so now let's get to, I do this every time we talk about this to make it crystal clear for everybody. Okay, Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. It's about disqualification from holding office. Let's read it. No person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president and vice president or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state who, having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States or as a member of any state legislature or as an executive or judicial officer of any state to support the Constitution of the United States shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof, but Congress may, be, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such a disability. So, look, my interpretation of this, my plain-faced reading interpretation of this is the Congress does have the right, if they want to declare, you know what, bygones are bygones, we don't really disagree with Trump that much. If Trump wants to run and you want to give people a vote, we're going to do a vote. If we get 2/3 or more of Congress, he's allowed to run. Congress can do that. Now, they haven't done that, which means, does the rest of the amendment actually apply when it comes to Trump? When I read it, I think it's pretty clear that it does. Because when you talk about you can't engage in insurrection, if you engage in insurrection, you can't hold office. Okay. But they even say, or give aid or comfort to the enemies who committed insurrection. Well, look, you could argue, and I think it's a hard argument to make, but you can argue as to whether or not Trump directly engaged in the insurrection, right? You can't argue that he didn't give aid and comfort to the people who were doing the insurrection. He was promoting January 6th. He was very clear about that. He was talking about how Mike Pence better do the right thing. We got to go take back our country. We got to do it with strength, folks. Go march on the Capitol. Go with strength. Remember, you take your country back with strength. You have all that. You have the fake elector theory, the fraudulent elector theory, their words, not mine. You have Trump's own team saying we're going to do an illegal vote counting scheme. These are all like matters of public record. There's tremendous evidence for it. So I think he both tried to commit an insurrection, but also gave aid and comfort to the people who did commit an insurrection more directly, right? The Oath Keepers on the ground and all the people who stormed the Capitol, etc. So I don't know how this doesn't apply. I don't know. And I'm still waiting to hear any sort of coherent legal argument. I'll grant you that the lower Colorado court made a legal argument. I just don't think it's very coherent, and I disagree with them. But I'm waiting to hear literally any legal argument as to why Trump should still remain on the ballot. Basically, every point I've heard amounts to, I basically don't think this should be in the Constitution. And it's like, okay, but it is in the Constitution. So that has to mean something. That has to matter. If you want to hold some sort of constitutional convention and remove it, okay. In that scenario, then we wouldn't have a leg to stand on. But we do. And you don't. Right? So, oh man, it's crazy. It's crazy. Nobody can give a legal argument. How hard did this guy try? How hard did this CNN host try to get any legal point out of this guy? And he couldn't do it. The fact of the matter is, the plain-faced reading of 14th Amendment, Section 3 of the Constitution is Donald Trump cannot hold office. Period. Period. People might not like the conclusion of that. It doesn't really fucking matter. That's the plain-faced reading of it. That's accurate. So we'll see what the Supreme Court says. I think it's a 70% likelihood they side with Trump because it's a very conservative court. But you never know. But I will grant you this. At least the Supreme Court, even if they decide incorrectly, they'll make a legal argument. Unlike literally everybody else who wants to give their opinion on this and say, no, I think Trump should still run. Thank you for your deep insight. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.